In the summer of 1966, two children walked into the hills above Ashridge Hollow and never came back down. Their lunch pails were found by the mine entrance. Their shoes, one pair small, one smaller, lay side by side like they'd been placed there on purpose. 59 years later, the drought strips the hills bare, exposing a collapsed tunnel and the first bones. When police make an arrest, the suspect isn't a drifter or a stranger. It's the town's last living miner, the man who led the search for those kids half a century ago. And when investigators crack open the sealed shaft, they don't just uncover the past, they wake something that's still breathing. This is the Holler Line. If you're new here, subscribe for the full series Ashridge Hollow, West Virginia, August 21st, 1966. That summer, the valley smelled like sulfur and honeysuckle, a sweet burn that soaked into your clothes and never quite washed out. The mine siren had been silent for weeks, but its echo hung in the air anyway, a ghost noise that rose with the evening cicadas. Evan Kell, 12, crouched on the ridge behind his house, tossing pebbles at a tin can. His little sister Ruthie sat nearby, legs swinging, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick. Their father's voice drifted up from the porch, angry, tired, half-slurred with frustration. Their mother didn't answer. She hadn't, not since the meeting in town when the company men promised new jobs that never came. "Pa's fightin' ghosts again," Ruthie said. Evan didn't look at her. "He's fightin' the mine." Same thing. Below them, the Kell house slumped into the slope like it had been trying to sink for years. Every window glowed with the orange of a kerosene lamp. Inside, dishes waited unwashed. The radio murmured hymns through static. The family dog barked once, then went quiet. Evan picked up the can, dented it flat, and pocketed it. He liked the way metal gave under pressure, predictable, not like people. When the last light faded from the ridge, he said, "Come on, let's see how far the line goes." He meant the cable line, the thick black cord strung from pole to pole along the edge of the abandoned mine road. The kids called it the Holler Line, though nobody knew why. It had been laid years ago to power the ventilation fans underground, then cut and forgotten when the lower shafts flooded. The adults said to stay away. The ground out there wasn't safe, but curiosity ran deeper than fear, especially in children who'd grown up hearing the mountain hum at night. They followed the line down the slope, Ruthie clutching Evan's shirt to keep her balance. Fireflies blinked between the trees, their light catching on the wire like sparks. Somewhere behind them, thunder rolled over the next ridge. "Pa said the mine's a throat," Ruthie whispered. "Said if you shout into it, it talks back." Evan laughed. "That's just echoes." "Then why'd it say his name last week?" He stopped. The air around the line buzzed faintly. A vibration felt more than heard. He knelt, pressed a palm to the cable. Warm. "Feels like it's alive," Ruthie said. "It's just heat." But when he lifted his hand, the humming deepened. They reached the mouth of the old shaft, a black semicircle framed in rotted timber, half hidden by kudzu. The air pouring from it was cold and damp, carrying the smell of iron. A faded sign warned authorized personnel only. Ruthie peered into the dark. "Hear that?" At first, nothing. Then a low sound, too steady to be wind, too slow not to be breathing. Evan raised his flashlight. The beam cut only a few feet before vanishing into dust. The tunnel floor shimmered faintly, wet with seepage. He hesitated. "Let's go back." But Ruthie was already stepping forward, barefoot on the cool stone, drawn by something she couldn't name. The light trembled as it followed her. "Ruthie!" A loud crack. The beam shook. The ground shifted under their feet. The hum surged like a heartbeat gone wild. Evan lunged for her hand, but she was gone, vanished into a plume of dust as the earth caved inward. "Ruthie!" His voice echoed through the tunnel, thin and swallowed. Then silence. By the time the search party arrived, the collapse had sealed itself. They dug for 3 days, found nothing but a child's red ribbon caught on a splintered beam and the flattened can Evan had carried. The official report called it an accidental subsidence. The locals called it the mine taking back what was owed. And when the Kell family left town 6 months later, the line still hummed at night, faint and steady, like the mountain was remembering their names. The rain had stopped for the first time in a month, leaving the valley raw and exposed. A film of silt clung to everything: trucks, mailboxes, even the church steeple that had watched over Ashridge Hollow for a century. Lena Ward parked at the edge of what used to be Route 9, now a patchwork of cracked asphalt and clay. She cut the engine and listened. The silence felt wrong, as if the hills were holding their breath. She'd come for the story beneath the story, not the historic drought unearths local mine headline, but the one too old, too personal, and too soaked in guilt to make the news the first footage had shown it. A bulldozer clearing silt near the old mine entrance. Then the camera shaking as something pale surfaced from the dirt. A ribcage, half crushed but unmistakably human. Then another, and another. By dawn, they'd found 6 sets of remains, 5 adult, 1 small. The sheriff's department roped off the site and called it historical. But a week later, the state crime lab called it murder. And this morning, they'd arrested Calvin Rowe. Lena had known his name long before it trended online. In her father's old union journals, Rowe's signature appeared again and again. Meeting notes, protest rosters, petitions against the mining company. He'd been the face of resistance in 1966, the man who'd led the search for the Kell children after the collapse. Now he was 78, stooped and quiet, with eyes that still watched the mountain like it owed him a debt. She adjusted the mic clip to her jacket. The camera's red light blinked. "Day 1, Ashridge Hollow investigation," she said softly. "Authorities have detained Calvin Rowe, former miner and union steward, in connection with the 1966 disappearance of Evan and Ruthie Kell. Local reports say the arrest shocked the remaining residents. For nearly 60 years, Rowe was considered a hero. Now he's the suspect behind her." The sun broke through low clouds, revealing the skeletal remains of machinery buried half a century. Rusted conveyors, broken carts, the mouth of the shaft dark as a wound. Deputy Marlon Price waved her back from the tape. "Press ain't allowed past this point, Ms. Ward." "I'm not press," Lena said. "Documentary investigation, independent." He gave her the tired look of a man who'd spent too many years saying no to people who didn't listen. "That's what the last guy said before he started digging." Lena turned off the camera. "I'm not here to dig. I just need context." Price sighed and leaned against the patrol car. "Context? The old man lived 2 houses down from the Kells, led the first rescue crew. He's the one who told us the ground ate them. Guess he knew what he was talking about." "You believe he did it?" He hesitated. "I believe the line runs deeper than it should, and that some folks been listening to it too long. The line," he gestured toward the mine road. "Cable used to run from here clear through the ridge, power for the fans. Folks said you could hear it hum at night, even after they cut the current. Lena watched the tape flutter in the wind. A sound did rise from the hollow, low, rhythmic, metallic. Machinery, maybe, or memory. "Rowe's at the county lockup?" she asked. "For now." She drove there before sunset, through a town that felt like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Storefronts shuttered, church boards curling at the edges. Even the air smelled dated, coal dust and damp pine. At the jail, the clerk told her she'd need clearance. But when she said documentary, something in the woman's face softened. "Go easy on him," she murmured. "He's all that's left of the hollow." The interview room was the color of concrete and nicotine. Rowe sat alone, wrists cuffed, back straight. The years had thinned him to rope and sinew. "You're not with the police," he said when she entered. "No, I'm documenting the case. I'd like to understand what happened in 1966. He smiled without warmth. "You mean what they say happened?" Lena set her recorder on the table. "Tell me your version, For a long time, he said nothing. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, filling the silence like a nervous tick. "Wasn't the first time the mountain took somebody," he said at last. "Wasn't the last, neither. But those kids—" His throat tightened. "They heard it before the rest of us." "Heard what?" He looked at her with eyes clouded by coal dust and grief. "The hum. Comes up through the rock. Old miners said it's the heartbeat of the hollow. But hearts don't hum, do they, Miss Ward? They breathe." Her pulse quickened. "You're saying the mountain's alive?" "I'm saying we fed it long enough. It started eating back." She leaned forward. "The remains they found, were they from the strike?" Rose's gaze shifted toward the one-way glass. "You dig deep enough, you'll find the truth don't rot. It just waits." He closed his eyes, as if listening to something far away. "You'll hear it soon." Everybody does that night. Lena reviewed the footage in her motel room. On the playback, his last sentence registered barely above a whisper, but beneath it, she caught something else. A low-frequency hum, steady as breathing. She paused, replayed. There it was again. Not background noise, not feedback. Something older, and faintly beneath the hum. A second sound. Two voices, high and childlike, echoing from somewhere in the dark. "Pa's fighting ghosts again." "Same thing?" Her coffee went cold as she stared at the waveform on her screen. It was impossible, but the hollow had always been good at making the impossible sound real. Rain crept back in before dawn, thin as breath and sharp enough to sting. It fell on the tin roofs of Ashridge Hollow, on the police cruisers parked by the courthouse, on the mountain that slept fitfully above it all. Lena Ward hadn't slept. She sat in her rented room, the curtains drawn, the motel sign bleeding red through the fabric. The recording from last night looped on her laptop. Rose's voice, then that hum, the faint children's echoes beneath it. She replayed the segment until she could tell the difference between her heartbeat and the static. By sunrise, she packed up her gear and headed for Rose's property. It lay 2 miles past the old mine road, up where the asphalt gave up and the dirt took over. The locals called it the Rim. The house looked forgotten even by gravity. Porch sagging, shutters askew, a "for sale" sign. Half sunk in mud. Weeds had grown over the steps like veins. The front door was unlocked. Inside smelled of rust and mildew, old paper and something faintly sweet. Oil, or maybe memory. The living room was small, filled with relics. Faded photographs of miners lined shoulder to shoulder. A cracked television. A Bible with its spine broken from use. Lena set her camera to record. "Calvin Row residence. Site visit following his arrest," she whispered. "Interior appears undisturbed since detainment. Seeking physical evidence, personal records, or archival media from 1966 to 1970. Her voice steadied as the camera hummed. In the kitchen, a layer of coal dust clung to every surface. A cracked mug read, "Local 94 Forever." She brushed her fingers along the counter, leaving clean lines like excavation paths. Then she heard it. A faint mechanical whir, almost beneath hearing, coming from the wall behind the sink. Not pipes. Too rhythmic. She pressed her ear against the plaster. The sound repeated, low and circular. "Old wiring," she said out loud, though she didn't believe it. She tapped the wall, hollow. Using her pocket knife, she scraped away at the wallpaper, its pattern of faded leaves curling back like old skin. Beneath, the drywall was cracked. One good push, and it gave. Inside was a small wooden cavity, lined with tar paper. A reel-to-reel tape recorder sat within. Its spools still coated in dust. A handwritten label on the reel read, "Union Meeting, August, 66. Lena stared for a long moment. Then she reached in, careful not to disturb the wiring that snaked behind it. The recorder was heavy, military grade, built to last decades. She carried it to the table, found a working outlet, and held her breath as she flipped the switch. The reels began to spin, slow at first, then steady. Static. Then voices. Men talking in low tones, one of them unmistakably Calvin Rose, young, angry, full of conviction. "They're sealing the lower shaft tonight," Rose said, "without permits, without clearance. Kell's fighting it, but Danton's got the company behind him. Once that concrete's in, nobody'll know what's under there." Another voice, older, deliberate. "You want to lose your job, son? Let it lie. There's more down there than coal. You think I don't know that? The ground's humming like a live wire. My boys won't go near it. Says it breathes." A pause. Chairs scraped. Someone whispered, "You hear that?" Then the tape warped. Lena leaned closer. Beneath the hiss, the hum returned, low, wet, rhythmic, vibrating through the speakers as if the recorder were remembering it firsthand. The men on the tape began to argue, their words dissolving into noise. Then a sharp crack, like wood splintering, and someone shouting, "Get the kids out!" The recording ended in a burst of static so loud it made her flinch. The reels spun empty for a few seconds, then stopped. She sat motionless, her pulse hammering in her throat. It wasn't a union meeting. It was a record of a collapse. The collapse. The night the Kell children vanished. She rewound the tape and checked the timestamp. August 21st, 1966. The same night. Lena took photos of the device, every angle, every marking. Then she noticed something else, etched faintly into the metal casing, half hidden beneath a smear of grime. The Holler Line. Not a name, not a label. A message. She unplugged the recorder and carried it outside. The morning light was thin and gray, filtering through low fog that crawled along the ground. The hum from the wall was gone, replaced by the softer sound of wind through trees. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant editor, Jay. "Jay, local station says sheriff's office sealing off the mine again. They found something else last night." Lena. "What?" Jay. "Said it's not bones this time. Said it's metal." She stared at the words until they blurred. From the porch, she looked back at the house. Inside, the hole in the wall gaped open, wallpaper edges fluttering. The air in the kitchen shimmered faintly in the light, like heat over asphalt, or like something exhaling. When she started the car, the radio crackled to life on its own. No station, no voice, just that low hum, steady as breath, growing louder as she drove down the mountain road toward the mine. By the time Lena reached the mine, half the county was already there. Trucks lined the dirt road, state police, news vans, a single white coroner's SUV idling in the mud. The rain had eased to mist, thick as breath, turning the scene into something half-remembered. Floodlights ringed the pit where the collapse had exposed the old ventilation tunnel. Excavators stood silent, their arms slick with mud. Men in hard hats murmured at the edge, their faces washed bone-pale in the floodlights. Sheriff Nolan Price stood by the tape, clipboard in hand, watching a group of forensic techs lower a sensor into the hole. Lena parked a few yards back and started rolling. Her voice was steady now, practiced. Day 2. Investigators have uncovered what appears to be a sealed maintenance chamber beneath the main shaft. According to state archives, this section wasn't on any company blueprints. Officials are calling it a secondary sublevel. Locals call it something else. The Holler Line. She approached the sheriff. "Mind if I get a closer angle?" Price rubbed a hand over his beard, weary. "Long as you stay behind the tape." "What did they find?" He glanced toward the hole. Metal plating, 6 feet down. Smooth, welded. Ain't part of the mine, far as we can tell. One of the boys dropped a mic down there. Says he heard breathing. He almost smiled when he said it, like he knew how it sounded. But his eyes didn't. "Could be airflow," Lena offered. "Could be." He looked back at the pit. "We'll know when we cut it open." She filmed as the team began lowering a portable drill rig into position. The machinery groaned, echoing through the hollow. Every few seconds, the hum beneath the ground seemed to answer, a subtle vibration that rippled up through Lena's boots. Her phone buzzed again. Jay, from the office. Jay, just pulled property records. Rose's house sits right above an old maintenance tunnel, runs straight toward the Kell property line. You're going to want to see the map I found. Lena, email it. I'm at the site. They're cutting through the metal now. The reply came fast. Jay, don't stand too close. The drill screamed as it hit the plate, a sound sharp enough to make every conversation die. The smell of ozone and wet iron filled the air. Lena's camera trembled in her hands. Then, silence. One of the techs shouted something. The drill had gone dead. Every machine in the pit followed, lights flickering, engines choking off one by one. For a moment, the only sound was the wind combing through the trees. Then came the hum, deeper this time, rolling up from the pit like a low note from an unseen organ. Lena felt it in her ribs, in her teeth. A few workers backed away. The sheriff barked orders, but nobody moved toward the hole. A single floodlight exploded, showering sparks. Another blinked out, then another. The world shrank to half shadow, the pit glowing faintly from below, as if something inside the chamber reflected light that wasn't there. Lena kept filming. Her lens caught movement, dust swirling in tight spirals, like breath meeting cold air. Someone shouted for the generator. When it sputtered back to life, the hum faded, leaving only the rain and the smell of burned metal. The plate had cracked. A line the width of a finger ran down its center, bleeding rust. Seal it up, Price ordered. Nobody goes near that until the state boys get here. Lena zoomed in. The crack pulsed faintly, like the ground was exhaling. Back at her motel that night, she uploaded the footage. The file stuttered halfway through, pixels freezing on the frame where the plate cracked. The audio behind it was pure static, until it wasn't. A voice emerged, warped and distant. "Get the kids out." Lena froze. She scrubbed backward, replayed it. "Get the kids out." It was the same phrase from Rose's hidden tape, but this was recorded hours ago, at the mine. She leaned closer to the speakers. Beneath the voice, something else moved. A slow, rhythmic thrum, like air drawn through a throat too long sealed. Then her laptop screen glitched. For half a second, an image appeared where the pit should have been. Two figures, small, standing in the darkness beyond the plate, their outlines shimmering with static. When she blinked, they were gone. The next morning, the town woke to sirens. The mine road had collapsed overnight. The entire pit caved in, swallowing the floodlights, the fencing, and the edge of the road itself. The sheriff's deputies found only one thing left at the rim of the hole: a steel cable, frayed at the ends, humming softly in the wind. Lena stood beside it, filming, the red light on her camera steady. "Update," she whispered. "The sub-level chamber caved sometime after midnight. Local authorities are calling it a structural failure, but witnesses say they heard the hum again, louder than before. Whatever was under that plate, it's not buried anymore." She lowered the camera, looked down into the hole. For a moment, she swore she saw the faint reflection of a child's ribbon twisting slowly in the dark, moving to a rhythm that matched the sound in her chest. Then the clouds rolled in, and it was gone. By the third morning, Ashridge Hollow felt smaller, like the valley had pulled in its edges to listen. Fog drifted low along the road, and the rain came down in threads fine enough to disappear before they hit the ground. Lena drove to the town's library, one of the few brick buildings still standing straight. The sign above the door read, "Established, 1949. The motto beneath, "Knowledge keeps us whole," was half-eaten by rust. Inside, the air smelled of wet wood and old microfilm. A librarian named Mavis Dunleary waited by the front desk, cardigan buttoned all the way up despite the warmth. She'd already heard who Lena was. Everyone had. "You're the reporter digging up the Kell case," she said. Not unkindly, but not welcoming either. "Trying to connect records," Lena said. "Specifically, anything on the mine's union hearings from 1966 through 1970. Company communications, geological surveys, whatever survived." Mavis hesitated, glancing toward the far corner. "We boxed all that years ago. Town lost funding. Nobody's looked at those files since before my husband died. Would you mind if I did?" The woman nodded toward the basement door. "You're welcome to try. But be careful what you wake down there. The Holler Line's older than the mine, you know." Lena paused. "You've heard that phrase before?" Mavis smiled, small and sad. "Everybody from here has. Folks used to say the earth had its own current. Carried voices through the rock. Back when the mine was running, you could feel it in your teeth when the wind changed. Like a song only the ground could hum. The basement was a skeleton of records and silence." Lena set up her camera on a tripod, habit more than need, and started sorting boxes. Most were mold-soft and water-stained, labeled with company codes in fading ink. HM/66, incident reports, mining cooperative meeting logs, geological surveys, lower sector B. She opened the last one first. Inside lay brittle blueprints rolled tight around a metal cylinder. When she uncoiled them, a faint whiff of rot rose, paper and dust and time. The map showed the tunnels in stark precision. 5 main shafts, each marked with measurements, notations, pressure lines. But a 6th route had been penciled in by hand, faint and looping. It wasn't labeled like the others, just a thin arc connecting the mine to the riverbed, ending in a small circle. Someone had written a single word beside it. Line. Lena traced it with her finger. The circle sat directly beneath the Kell property, exactly where the children vanished. She leaned closer. The pencil mark looked old, but the graphite still gleamed slightly under her light, as if it had been drawn with something other than graphite. Her phone buzzed. "Jay again. Jay, pulled that map you wanted. There's an acoustic survey from 1994. Mine got reopened briefly for inspections. They picked up something." Lena. "What kind of something?" Jay. "Subsurface resonance. Consistent, patterned, not geological. They said it responded to low-frequency sound tests." Lena stared at the message. Responded. That wasn't a word geologists used lightly. She packed the maps into her case, meaning to copy them later. As she turned, her boot scraped something metal under the shelf. She crouched. A spool of wire lay coiled there, thin as fishing line, leading up the wall toward an old outlet. The insulation had worn away in places. When she touched it, it vibrated faintly. She unplugged her camera's external mic and clipped it to the wire. The recorder hissed. Then, faintly, a voice. "Line's full again." Lena froze. "We keep pouring. It keeps filling. It don't want to stay shut." Another voice, softer. "Shut it before the shift change, before they hear it sing." The hum swelled through the wire, low and patient. Her camera's levels spiked, red, then steady. Then something cracked above her. Dust rained from the ceiling. She yanked the mic free and killed the recorder. The hum stopped. By the time she climbed back upstairs, the library lights had gone out. Mavis stood by the window, staring into the fog that had crept up to the glass. "You found what you were looking for?" "Maybe," Lena said. "Who drew the maps for the mine originally?" "An engineer from Charleston, name of Vance Kepler." Mavis turned slowly. "He died down there the same week the Kell children went missing." Lena blinked. "Accident?" "They said the shaft collapsed. But I saw his wife the next day. She told me he came home first, said he heard the ground whispering their names." The woman's gaze lingered on Lena for a long time before she added quietly, You keep listening to that hum, you'll hear your own name next. That night, back at the motel, Lena laid the blueprints across the bed. The drawn line looked alive under the lamplight, almost quivering where the pencil traced the earth. She synced the audio from the library wire to Rose's hidden reel. Both carried the same undertone, steady, organic, rhythmically precise. When she overlaid the two frequencies, a pattern formed. 5 pulses, then a pause, then one long note. Repeating. 5 short, 1 long. Over and over. Morse code. She cross-referenced it. It spelled one word. Open. Lena sat back, staring at the waveform. The hum wasn't random. It was calling for something. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, deep and slow. The motel walls trembled. Her lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied. On the screen, the audio feed spiked again. Unprompted, unrecorded. The pattern changed. 5 short, 1 long. Come. Lena killed the laptop and sat in the dark. The hum continued in the walls. The next morning, the fog was so thick it felt like breath. It clung to the trees, blurring the edges of the valley. The road to the Kell property had been closed for decades, half buried under roots and erosion. But Lena followed the old survey map anyway, the one she'd found in the library basement. The Kell house no longer existed. What remained was a mouth in the hillside, collapsed beams, a crumbled stone chimney, and a weed-choked outline of a foundation. The trees leaned toward it, roots knotting around what used to be walls. Lena parked the Jeep at the bottom of the path and walked the rest of the way with her camera in hand. June 20th, she whispered into the mic. Site of the Kell residence. Last confirmed location of Annie and Luke Kell. Missing August 21st, 1966. No recovery. Property condemned in 1970 following landslip reports. Returning now to cross-check with unlisted mining line discovered beneath Rose's property. Her voice wavered slightly as she said it, like even naming the place risked waking something. She stepped onto the broken porch. The board sighed beneath her weight. Her flashlight caught glints of nails, rusted through, and a half-buried toy car wedged between the planks. Paint gone, wheels locked in mud. Lena crouched, brushed dirt from its roof, and felt her pulse hitch. Someone had scratched 3 small letters into the metal. LKS, Luke Kell, 7 years old. Her recorder clicked on by itself, the red light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Who's there?" The voice wasn't hers. It was faint, childlike, trembling through the static. She stood still, breath fogging. The recorder continued, low at first, then clearer. "Is it time to go home?" Lena froze. Then the device went silent. She backed away, eyes on the recorder, the silence between trees feeling like something holding its breath. The cellar door was still there, though warped and half swallowed by soil. Someone had nailed it shut years ago, but the boards had rotted. Lena pried them free with a crowbar she kept in the Jeep. The wood snapped easily, one by one, until the final hinge gave. The smell that rolled out was old damp and coal dust. Her flashlight beam cut across the steps. Mud, water, bones of mice, and something metallic glinting near the far wall. She descended slowly, feet slipping in the muck. The flashlight wavered. The glint became shape. A small lunch pail, the kind miners used in the 60s. She opened it. Inside were 5 coins wrapped in wax paper, silver dollars, each one etched crudely with a number on the back, 1 through 5. On the underside of the lid, a word had been scratched deep into the metal. Line. Her heart pounded. She turned the coins in her palm. All of them felt warm, though the cellar was cold enough to see her breath. Then she heard it again. The hum. Faint at first, from somewhere below her feet. The ground trembled softly. She knelt, brushing away the thin layer of dirt near the center of the floor. Beneath, the packed soil had been replaced with concrete. The surface was smooth, pale, poured decades ago. Her mind jumped back to Ro's hidden tape. They're sealing the lower shaft tonight. The Kell cellar was the shaft. She set her flashlight down, pressed her ear against the concrete. The hum vibrated through it, rhythmic, patient, alive. She whispered into her recorder. Contact point detected beneath Kell Foundation, matching resonance pattern from Ro tape and wire recording. This is it, the Holler Line. A faint crack echoed through the room. She lifted her head. One of the old support beams groaned, shedding a shower of dust. Then, very softly, from behind her, "Miss?" She turned. No one. "Miss, don't dig." The voice came from the recorder again. Same tone as before, small, trembling. A child. Her flashlight stuttered. The hum swelled, pressing up through the floorboards. She scrambled up the stairs, nearly slipping on the wet boards, and burst into the daylight. The fog had thickened, wrapping the ruins in gauze. When she looked back, the cellar door had swung shut. She hadn't touched it. Lena backed away until she reached the tree line. Her pulse thudded in her ears. The hum followed her out into the clearing, soft and deep, like the ground remembering a song it was never meant to sing. That night, she drove to town and parked outside the old diner where the locals still gathered. Conversations died the second she stepped inside. She ordered coffee, ignoring the stares, and asked the waitress, "Did you ever know the Kell family?" The woman, gray hair, eyes hollow from years of smoke and stories, set down the cup. Everybody knew 'em. Annie and Luke, sweet kids. Vanish same night the mine blew. Sheriff called it a cave-in, but there weren't no quake. Whole town felt the ground move like it was alive. Alive? The waitress nodded slowly. "My daddy worked those tunnels. Said the deeper you dug, the more the rock sounded hollow, like you were mining something that was already empty." Lena sipped her coffee. "Did anyone ever go back?" The woman's lips twitched. "One man did. Vance Kepler, the engineer. Said he heard whispering from the walls. Next morning, they found him face down in the creek, ears bleeding." She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You want my advice?" "Don't listen too long. The line don't like being remembered." Back in her car, Lena replayed the new audio. The child's voice had left one last phrase before cutting out completely. "He's still pouring." She sat in silence, rain tapping the windshield. He could have meant Crow, or Danton, or whoever had built the line in the first place. But when she replayed it again, she noticed something she hadn't before. Under the child's whisper, faint but unmistakable, the sound of liquid moving, concrete, pouring, and beneath it, 5 steady beats. Heartbeat. The road back to the mine had been half-eaten by the last storm. Mud peeled off the slope in slow sheets, carrying stones and roots into the ditch. Lena's tires slipped twice before she reached the barricade, a sagging wooden crossbar, its reflective tape long peeled away. The official vehicles were gone. No floodlights, no crews, just silence and the deep, patient sound of dripping water somewhere below the ridge. Her headlights swept over the crater's edge. The collapse had widened. What used to be the access pit was now a gaping bowl 20 feet across, sloped like an open mouth. She parked with the engine running and kept the camera rolling as she stepped into the mist. "June 21st, she whispered. "Return to Ashridge Mine perimeter. All official work suspended. I'm here to document the subsidence site before further rainfall covers it." Audible hum reported again last night by residents near the ridge. The wind shifted. The hum was already there, low, pulsing through the soles of her boots, deeper than sound, like a vibration that began inside her chest and moved outward. She edged closer to the rim. The hole glistened with runoff. The air rising from it was warm, almost metallic. Her camera's focus struggled in the fog. The red record light flickered. Then something moved. At first, she thought it was shadow, one of the broken beams catching the light. But then it shifted again, slowly, deliberately. A silhouette standing on the far side of the pit. Hello? No answer. The beam of her flashlight trembled across the figure. Male, tall, shoulders bent under a heavy coat. His face was hidden beneath the brim of an old miner's helmet. He held something in his hand, a lantern. Lena's throat tightened. "Sir, this area's unstable. You need to move away from the edge." He didn't move. The lantern flared once, a pulse of amber light that cut through the mist. For a moment, it illuminated the ground around him, and she saw the same smooth concrete that had sealed the plate before. She blinked, and the light went out. The figure was gone. Only the hum remained. She took one cautious step closer, then another. The mud gave under her weight, sliding toward the pit. She caught herself on a rusted fence post, heart hammering. The camera wobbled in her grip. Its screen stuttered, froze, then flashed white. For half a second, an image burned there. Not the crater, but a corridor of wet concrete stretching into darkness. Along its walls hung old mining helmets, each one flickering faintly with internal light. Then the screen went black. Lena lowered the camera, shaking. She backed toward the car, forcing herself not to run. The hum grew louder. A low grinding sound rose from the pit, the slow movement of rock against rock. She turned just in time to see part of the slope collapse inward, revealing a metal edge beneath the soil, smooth, curved, and glinting faintly through the mud. She raised the camera again. The focus clicked, found shape. It wasn't rock. It was a door. Massive, circular, half buried in the hillside, its surface divided into 5 segments, each one etched with the same symbol she'd seen on the coins and the lunch pail lid, an apple blossom. The air around it shimmered. The hum deepened until she could feel it in her teeth. Then faintly, from behind her, boots on gravel. She turned, expecting Sheriff Price or a trespassing crew. But it was the man again, closer now, standing in the glow of her headlights. Rain ran off his coat in sheets, and the lantern in his hand burned without a flame, its glass brimming with molten gold light. Lena froze. "Who are you?" He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were black, not from shadow, but from something inside them. Coal dust or something deeper. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. His voice was calm, quiet, steady. "Are you—" She stopped herself. "Are you one of the contractors?" He smiled faintly. "Contractors pour for the company. I pour for the ground." The hum behind them rose, swallowing the space between words. "You work for Crow?" she asked. "Crow worked for me." The lantern flickered, and for an instant she saw what he held in his other hand. A concrete trowel, its edge dark with rust. Her mouth went dry. "What's behind that door?" "The first pour," he said. "The one that fed the rest. You open it, the line don't stop. You cap it, you feed it again. That's the work." He took one step toward her. Lena backed up, boots slipping in the mud. "The children. What happened to them?" He tilted his head, as though listening to something below. "They're the ones who wouldn't leave. Ground keeps what belongs to it." "Who are you?" He smiled again, and for the briefest moment, the lantern light caught the name stitched faintly into his coat. Letters half erased by years of grime. H. Crow. Her breath hitched. "You can't be. Not while the line still hums." He looked past her to the crater. "It's waking." The hum turned to a roar. The ground vibrated under her feet. Crow raised the lantern high, its glow spilling over the rim, casting everything in amber. The circular door below them began to move, dust falling, bolts twisting with the groan of something ancient and mechanical. "Stop!" Lena shouted. "You'll bring it down!" But he only whispered, "It's already rising." The door split down the middle. A gush of air rolled out, hot and thick with the scent of concrete and iron. The fog swirled upward like breath escaping a long-held mouth. Then, as suddenly as it began, the hum stopped. Silence dropped over the valley like a shroud. When Lena blinked against the dust, Crow was gone. Only the lantern remained at the edge of the pit, still burning with its impossible light. She approached it slowly, knees weak. The glass surface reflected her face, and for a second, another beside it. A child's. Then the light went out. Back in her car, she sat for a long time without moving. The mud on her boots was still warm. When she finally checked her camera, the battery was dead. But the last recorded file had a timestamp, 2:17 a.m., and a single frame burned into the corrupted preview. 5 small silhouettes standing in front of the open door. Morning came as a gray film that dulled every edge of the valley. The storm had rinsed away the fog, but left the air thick with clay dust. From her motel window, Lena could see the ridge line, the scar of the mine collapse now visible even from miles away, a raw wound in the green. She hadn't slept. The footage from the night before looped through her mind. The circular door, the lantern, the 5 child-shaped silhouettes that couldn't exist. The image sat in her camera, encrypted by her own fear. At 8:30, her phone buzzed. Jay! Jay. Heard about another arrest. Lena. Who? Jay. County Archives clerk. Tried to pull original land plats for Ashridge. Sheriff shut him down, then changed the subject. Lena. Why would the sheriff care about land plats? Jay. Because the plats predate the mine, and the boundaries make a shape. Sending you a photo now. The image arrived seconds later, a scan of an 1889 survey map gone sepia with age. The town was smaller then, just a few farms and an orchard labeled Danton Apple Works. 5 black dots marked the old mining claims. When Lena connected them with her finger, they formed a perfect circle. At the center sat the word line. She stared until her eyes watered. The 5 shafts, each one where a disappearance had been reported between 1930 and 1966, weren't random. They were arranged like petals, an orchard blossom. She drove to the Historical Society, a low white building that looked more like a funeral home than a museum. Inside, the curator, Mr. Bramwell, was cataloging photographs under a buzzing fluorescent light. He looked up as she entered. If you're here about the mine, we're closed to outside research. I'm not press, Lena said. Documentary study. I need anything tied to Danton Apple Works, late 1800s. He hesitated, then motioned her toward the back. You won't find much. The company vanished before the Depression. Fire took the main plant. Only thing left's their ledger books. The storage room smelled of vinegar and paper. On the highest shelf sat a box marked Danton Records. Property logs. The pages inside were brittle, written in brown ink. Most were dull accounting, bushels sold, wages paid. But the final entry caught her eye. 5 roots laid, 1 seed sealed. The bloom will guard what's owed. No signature. Just the date, April 5th, 1889. She copied it, heart thudding. When she turned, Bramwell was watching her. Those lines, he said quietly, they're not about farming. What are they about? Pouring. Danton wasn't just an orchard baron. He owned the first concrete mill in the state. Built half this valley on his own mix. Folks said he used river silt instead of sand. Claimed it made the walls breathe. Lena felt the chill rise through her spine. Where was the mill? He pointed toward the ridge. Right under what became the main mine. They said when he poured his last batch, the ground shook for 3 days. She left the museum with the ledger clamped under her arm like evidence and drove east toward the old Danton property. The road was little more than 2 tire ruts through wild apple trees gone feral. The air smelled faintly of sweetness and rot. Halfway up the hill, the trees thinned, revealing the foundations of a long-collapsed building. Crumbled stone, rusted vats, the skeleton of a chute running into the hillside. The ground near the chute was darker than the surrounding earth, slick even after days of sun. When Lena knelt, moisture clung to her fingers, oily, metallic, faintly warm. She set up her camera. June 22nd. Remains of Danton Appleworks. Probable origin of the Holler Line. Foundational residue consistent with iron aggregate concrete. Site aligns with the circle formed by the 5 mine shafts. Ledger references 5 roots, 1 seed. Possible precursor to the Union's 5 shafts, central chamber, as seed. Her voice shook only once. She traced the chute's direction with her eyes. It led straight toward the ridge where the circular door had opened. The hum was absent here, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed against her ears. Something gleamed near the base of the foundation, a bronze plaque half buried in dirt. She wiped it clean. Danton Concrete Co. Silence is strength. As she read it, her camera's mic began to hiss. Not feedback, breathing. She turned toward the sound. At the tree line, a figure stood watching. A child, maybe 9, barefoot, hair hanging in wet ropes. For a moment, Lena thought it was a trick of the light. Then the child raised a hand. The gesture wasn't a wave. It was a warning. The recorder spiked, capturing a burst of static that sounded almost like words. "He's still pouring." Lena blinked, and the figure was gone. The orchard fell silent again except for the slow creak of branches. She looked down at her hands. Her palms were streaked gray, as though she'd been handling wet cement. That night, in the motel, she spread the survey map, the ledger copy, and her photos across the bed. Each connection led to the same shape. 5 shafts, 5 roots, 1 seed. She overlaid the map with a current satellite image. The pattern centered perfectly over the mine's collapsed sublevel, the door she'd seen open. Her laptop pinged. An incoming file from Jay. Acoustic overlay experiment. She played it. He'd combined the hum's frequency with the map's coordinates, translating each pulse into a tone. The result was unsettling. Music that wasn't music. A repeating phrase of 5 low notes and 1 long sigh. Lena realized she'd heard that exact rhythm once before, in church bells. She whispered the words aloud. 5 short, 1 long. Her laptop speakers hissed. The hum responded faintly from somewhere inside the walls. The bulbs flickered. And then, from her recorder on the desk, another child's voice. Clear, near, exhausted. "We kept the orchard alive. You have to finish the pour." Lena backed away, every instinct screaming to run. The recorder clicked off. The room settled. She looked again at the ledger's final line, inked over a century ago. "The bloom will guard what's owed." Through the window, lightning flashed over the ridge, illuminating the valley in brief white light. For a heartbeat, the orchard trees all seemed to bow toward the mine, as if listening for the hum beneath the soil. The storm broke again that night. Lightning crawled along the ridge, striking the old radio tower until it glowed like a tuning fork for the valley. Each thunderclap rolled through the hills, followed a moment later by a faint, answering vibration from underground. Lena followed the old Danton Mill Road with her headlights off. The rain reflected her dashboard light in thin silver veins. The map she'd pinned to the passenger seat glimmered each time lightning flashed. 5 circles, 1 center. The orchard line had led her here. The last unmarked point sat directly below the ruined mill. She parked by the concrete chute, slung her camera over her shoulder, and ducked under the rusted archway. The smell of the place was unmistakable. Lime, water, and something faintly sweet, like apples rotting in sugar. Her flashlight found a hatch half hidden behind a fallen vat. The hinges were bolted, but the metal had softened from decades of rain. 1 kick and it folded inward with a groan. A staircase spiraled down into the dark. She filmed as she descended, voice trembling but steady enough for narration. June 23rd. Substructure beneath Danton Mill. Evidence suggests this chamber predates the mine network, possible prototype for the Holler Line. Unconfirmed reports of acoustic resonance. Entering primary tunnel now. The steps ended at a corridor carved from limestone. A trickle of water ran down its center, reflecting her light in quick, nervous flashes. The walls bore grooves, symmetrical and deliberate, as though the stone had been poured into molds rather than cut. After 50 feet, the passage widened into a circular chamber. The ceiling arched low, reinforced by ribs of metal that gleamed like bone. At its center stood a pit, 3 meters across, lined with concrete. Beside it rested 5 empty molds shaped like coffins, each with a small plaque. Route 1, Route 5. Lena crouched, sweeping her beam along the floor. Fine cracks webbed outward from the pit, filled with something dark that pulsed faintly in the light. She whispered, "The first pour." The recorder on her chest picked up a faint rhythmic sound. Drip, pause, drip. A metronome of water or something thicker. She leaned over the pit. Inside lay a layer of wet cement. Fresh. Her throat tightened. Someone's still working down here. A noise echoed behind her, metal scraping against stone. She swung the light toward the tunnel. Nothing. Then the hum began again, rising from the pit itself, so deep it made her bones ache. The wet surface quivered like skin under breath. Lena stepped back. "Jay, if you can hear this on playback, I think—" The camera cut out. Darkness swallowed the chamber, leaving only the faint phosphorescence of the cement. Something moved beneath it, slow, deliberate, like a hand pressing upward from underneath. Lena stumbled for the stairs. Her shoulder struck the wall. Dust rained down. She clawed for her flashlight, found it, clicked it on. The pit was still, the surface smooth again as if untouched, but a shape now rested at the edge, a small boot, concrete still clinging to its sole. She forced herself forward, knees weak. The boot was real, leather, half-rotted. Inside, a sliver of red fabric, Ruthie Kell's ribbon. Lena whispered into the recorder, "Confirmed artifact from 1966 disappearance." Her breath shook. If this was poured last night, then— A voice cut her off. Soft male from the dark tunnel. "You came too soon." She froze. "Crow?" Silence. Then the scrape of metal on concrete. The unmistakable sound of a trowel smoothing wet mix. She edged toward the staircase, keeping the beam on the tunnel mouth. The light caught a figure kneeling by the pit, hands moving in slow, ritual rhythm. It was Crow, or what was left of him. His skin looked gray in the light, dusted with fine cement powder. Every motion of his arm left a trace that never quite settled. He didn't look up. "It takes 5 pours to keep the hollow quiet." Lena's voice cracked. "What happens if you stop? The ground opens, and everything we buried remembers how to breathe." She took another step back. Those children. He set the trowel down carefully and rose. His eyes were blank stone. They were the first seal. The bloom needed roots. The hum thickened, pressing against her ribs. The cracks in the floor glowed faintly, pulsing in time with his words. Crow reached for the bucket beside him and tipped it toward the pit. A pale slurry spilled out, steaming in the cold air. The smell of lime burned her throat. "Stop!" Lena shouted. He didn't. The liquid spread across the floor, creeping toward her boots. It hissed where it touched the air, as if alive. She bolted up the stairs, camera bouncing against her chest. The hum followed, louder, chasing her through the tunnel like an approaching train. When she burst through the hatch into the rain, the sound cut off. The night above was still. The orchard beyond the mill glowed faintly in the stormlight. 5 clusters of trees bent inward around a single clearing. From the center of that clearing rose a new shape of earth, smooth and pale, still wet with the shine of fresh concrete. She stood there until dawn, watching steam drift from it like breath. At sunrise, she sent Jay the footage. Within an hour, he called. "Lena, I ran the GPS tag from your camera," he said, voice tight. "That spot under the mill, it's not new. Satellite scans show a heat signature there every 6 years, always after heavy rain, meaning somebody's been down there for decades, keeping it warm." She closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. "Crow said it takes 5 pours. How many have there been?" Jay hesitated. "According to county records, 5 so far. And the next? Tomorrow's the 6th anniversary of the last collapse." The line clicked with static, a low hum threading through his words. "Lena?" he said. "You still there?" But she couldn't answer. The hum filled the room completely now, rising from the walls, the floor, even the air. Outside her window, the orchard trees were bowing again, toward the ridge, toward the mouth of the valley, like a congregation listening for something about to speak. By the next afternoon, the storm had passed, leaving the valley washed clean and brittle, as if every color had been scraped off its surface. The smell of wet lime lingered above the orchards. Lena hadn't slept. Her phone sat on the motel nightstand, screen black except for the blinking message from Jay. Countdown, 22 hours. She replayed Crow's voice in her mind. 5 pours keep the hollow quiet. The 6th, then, would wake it. At noon, she drove east, following the service road that wound toward the old spillway. Federal survey trucks lined the shoulder, men in yellow vests marking soil samples and snapping photos. She didn't stop. The hum was gone now, but something about the air felt pressurized, like breath held too long. The coordinates Jay had traced led to a reservoir site 5 miles beyond the mill, dry for decades, sealed by concrete after a flood in 1988. Now, according to the survey plans, it was scheduled for foundation reinforcement. She parked beneath the dam's cracked face and walked toward the noise of engines. Cement trucks idled in a semicircle, their drums turning lazily. A banner on the fencing read, "Marin Concrete and Son, EST, 1954. The name made her stomach knot. She slipped under the tape and kept to the shadows of the equipment yard. Down below, men in hard hats stood around a newly cut pit. The same pale vapor rose from it, the same smell. Lena pulled her camera from her jacket and zoomed in. What she saw made her chest tighten. 5 smaller trenches around a central shaft, exactly like the map. This wasn't reinforcement, it was choreography. A ritual laid out in trenches and rebar. She filmed, whispering for her audience, "It's happening again. 6th pour. They think it keeps the valley from collapsing, but every time it grows, you can hear it if you..." A low vibration cut through the air. The ground trembled under her feet. The workers didn't seem to notice. They moved mechanically, feeding hoses into the shaft, checking gauges, eyes dull and blank as sleepwalkers. Lena crept closer, ducking behind a stack of rebar. A man in a white hard hat oversaw the pour. His voice carried through the echo. "Open Route 1, he ordered. The foreman flipped a lever. Wet concrete surged through a pipe into the first trench. Steam curled upward like breath. Lena recognized the foreman's profile. The same from the 1999 zoning photos, just older. Dairy. She felt the first curl of panic, but forced herself to keep filming. "Route 2, Derry called. The second hose opened. The hum deepened. Her recorder flickered with interference. Voices threaded through the static, childlike, overlapping, impossible. "Close it! Close it now!" She clamped her hand over the mic. "Who's there?" No reply, only the hum, thick and rhythmic. At the pit's edge, Derry looked up suddenly, eyes locking on her camera lens. His expression didn't change, but he raised one hand and pointed directly at her. "Route 3, he said. The vibration doubled. The ground rippled. A fissure opened near Lena's boot, spilling a thin ribbon of gray slurry. She backed away, heart hammering. Something beneath the soil shifted. Massive, slow. She ran. Behind her, the engines roared to life, a cacophony of gears and pumps. The smell of lime filled her throat. When she reached the ridge, she turned and looked back. The entire site pulsed with light now, gold from within the earth. Jay's voice crackled through her earpiece. "I'm picking up seismic movement under the dam. You have to get out." "They're pouring it again," she shouted. "All of it." "Then we kill the power." "The mixers are electric. Cut the feed and it stops." "Where?" "Main control shed by the southern gate." She sprinted along the fence until she saw the gray shack with the blinking hazard light. The hum was so loud it made her vision stutter. She shoved the door open. Inside, a single panel glowed red. 5 switches, each labeled Route 1 through Route 5, and one central lever marked Heart. Every switch except the last was flipped up. The final one flickered. Her hands trembled. She gripped the lever. From the doorway came Derry's voice, low and calm. "Don't." He stood silhouetted against the light. The dust clung to his jacket. The same logo stamped across the chest. Crow and Son. Lena whispered, "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled faintly. "Crow built the line. I kept it breathing. By burying people. By keeping the ground from taking everyone else." She felt the metal sweat under her fingers. "What happens if I pull this?" His eyes flicked to the lever. "You'll drown half the valley in cement. But maybe that's mercy too." The floor trembled. A crack split the wall behind him, light spilling through in narrow threads. The hum became a roar. Lena yanked the lever down. Sparks exploded from the panel. The lights went dark. Outside, the pumps choked, their engines screaming before dying. Silence, then a sound like a sigh, the wet collapse of 1,000 tons of concrete settling all at once. Derry staggered backward. "You've stopped the pour," he said, "but you've unsealed it." From below came a deep, guttural exhale. The ground heaved. Steam erupted from the trenches. The center shaft split open like a wound. Lena ran toward the ridge as the pit imploded, swallowing trucks and men alike. The air glowed gold, then white. At the top, she turned one last time. The dam face was cracking, water bleeding through its seams, the hum rising higher and higher until it became a scream of metal. Then everything folded inward. The valley went dark. For a long moment there was nothing, just rain hissing on new stone. Then, faintly, she heard it again. The heartbeat. Slower now, but still there. When Lena opened her eyes, the world had been ground down to dust. She lay half buried at the edge of what used to be the dam. The air shimmered with heat. Fine gray ash floated down in slow spirals, coating her skin and hair until her reflection in the broken camera lens looked ghost white. Her ribs ached. Each breath scraped. Somewhere nearby, water hissed through a cracked pipe, a sound so faint it barely reached her over the steady pulse coming from the ground. The hum was back. Softer now, slower, but impossibly alive. She pushed herself upright. The valley stretched before her in ruin. Trucks half swallowed, scaffolding twisted, the pit sealed again beneath a smooth plate of new concrete. Steam rose from it in steady curls. Above the heat, she thought she saw faces flicker, just shapes in the vapor, probably her concussion talking. But when she blinked, they were still there, drifting, watching. The recorder on her vest still blinked red. She clicked play and heard only static. Then her own voice, from hours earlier. "If this was poured last night." The clip looped, rewound, played again. Something about it chilled her more than the cold air. She staggered toward the control shed. Half the roof had collapsed, burying the panel under rubble. Derry was nowhere. Only his white helmet sat upright near the doorway, a single crack running down its center. "Jay," she croaked into the mic. If you can hear me, site compromised. Dam collapsed. Multiple casualties. I think. The radio buzzed with interference. Then Jay's voice, distorted but there. Lena. Getting seismic feedback again. The line's still active. Readings coming from below you. She looked at the sealed concrete sheet. The pit's closed. Not the pit. Deeper. He sent coordinates to her phone. The screen flickered. Minus 14.3 meters. Sub-level conduit. Old maintenance tunnel, she whispered. Under the first pour. She found the stairwell half hidden beneath debris and descended. The steps were slick, carved straight into limestone. As she went deeper, the hum grew clearer. Not louder, just sharper, like a voice focusing. The tunnel at the bottom was narrow enough that her shoulders brushed both walls. The air was thick with moisture and the metallic sweetness of lime. Her flashlight beam cut through a fog of dust. After 50 feet, the tunnel widened into a chamber unlike any she'd seen. Concrete columns rose from the floor in tight concentric rings, like tree trunks in a forest that had grown in perfect circles. Between them hung shapes sealed in translucent resin, helmets, gloves, shovels, and bones, too human to mistake for anything else. Lena pressed a hand against one column. It was warm. Beneath the surface, light pulsed slowly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her radio crackled again. Jay's voice came through in fragments. "You need to get out. The reading's off the scale." "I think this is where they dumped the early pours," she said. "They called it containment. But this—" She turned in a slow circle, filming. "This is preservation." She reached the center of the room. The floor there was glass smooth, engraved with a symbol she recognized, the apple blossom, petals curling into roots. In its heart lay a small brass plate. Holler Line, prototype core. Her breath fogged the metal. The letters below it were newer, etched by hand. Route 6, initiated. Her pulse hammered. It's already begun. Behind her, a faint creak echoed through the tunnel. Then another. The columns shuddered slightly, releasing threads of dust. She stepped back. The hum deepened. From the resin nearest her, a single hairline crack spread. Light spilled out. Gold at first, then white, too bright to look at. Within the light, she saw movement. The figure inside the resin shifted, eyes opening, mouth parting. It was Derry's face suspended there, and when he spoke, the voice didn't come from his mouth. It poured out of the air itself. "You stopped the pour above? The heart wants to finish." Lena stumbled back. "You're dead." "The line doesn't die. It just changes keepers." The columns trembled harder. Cracks raced upward, branching like veins. From each, light poured out, flooding the chamber. Her camera sputtered. The lens caught the reflection of dozens of faces forming in the concrete. Men, women, children, all whispering the same two words. "Finish it." She turned and ran. The tunnel behind her groaned as the columns collapsed one by one. Dust filled the air. She coughed, lungs burning, barely able to see the stairs. At the surface, the light from below burst through the cracks, washing the valley in pale gold. She fell to her knees at the ridge, clutching the camera. The hum had become a heartbeat again, slow and deep. Jay's voice came faintly through the static. "Lena, are you alive?" "I don't know," she said. "I think it's still growing. Whatever it is, it's learning." There was a long silence. Then Jay whispered, "Get out of there." She looked down at the sealed sheet, the steam still rising from its seams. "If I leave, it spreads. Then what will you do?" Lena lifted the camera, focusing on the concrete field below. "Show them." All of it she pressed record. The hum filled the microphone, rising until it sounded almost like breathing. By morning, the footage had escaped her hands. Lena didn't know how. Maybe Jay had uploaded it, or maybe the system had auto-synced when the camera went live. All she knew was that when she woke in the motel, heart still pounding from the dream of golden light, the video was already climbing the algorithm. The Holler Line. Real investigation gone wrong. 2 million views in 4 hours. She watched the comments scroll like falling rain. Is this ARG or real? The hum at 3214 sounds human. The concrete faces, holy God. Someone online had looped the hum, slowed it to a crawl, and posted it as the sound of the valley breathing. Another posted an analysis claiming you could hear whispers under the bass frequencies. When she finally listened with earbuds, she heard it too. Finish it. Stay down. Her skin prickled. The same phrase that had followed her since the orchard. Jay called an hour later. His voice was ragged. It's everywhere, Lena. Even the backup drives. The waveform replicates. It's like it rewrites itself inside the file. What are you saying? I'm saying every person who's listened to that clip for more than a minute reports the same thing. Vibrations, pressure in the chest, headaches. Whatever that hum is, it's not sound anymore. She turned the laptop away from her, then shut it down. I tried. You can't. The servers keep re-uploading. It's in the metadata now, like it's learning how to survive. Thunder rolled far off over the ridge. She looked toward the valley. Thin shafts of golden mist rose from the soil in a perfect grid, marking the old roots. Then it's already out, she whispered. That afternoon, journalists arrived. Vans with satellite dishes, drone crews, influencers live streaming with ring lights still shining through the fog. The remains of the dam steamed behind the police tape. Detective Cates was there too, face drawn from sleeplessness. She saw Lena through the crowd and pushed past the reporters. You started something you can't finish, she said quietly. The state's declared a quarantine zone. They think it's a gas leak. People who went down there this morning, 2 collapsed. No burns, no injuries, just silence. Where's Jay? Cates hesitated. Hospital in Springfield. Seizure. He was editing your footage when it hit Lena, felt the ground tilt beneath her. He heard the hum. Cates nodded. They said he was trying to say something before he blacked out. Same words the others whispered. Lena didn't have to ask what they were. That night she drove to the ridge alone. The floodlights from the government crews turned the valley into a bowl of ghost light. Every tree trunk gleamed silver, every branch skeletal. She parked where the orchard used to be and stepped out. The air shimmered faintly. Not hot, not cold, just alive. Her camera's lens fogged, then cleared. When she checked the playback, the screen pulsed with faint golden flickers, like light trapped inside static. She spoke for the record, her voice trembling. June 27th, 48 hours after the 6th pour. The hum has evolved. It no longer depends on structure. It's airborne, digital, emotional. Every retelling seems to feed it. A rustle came from behind her. She turned. The orchard wasn't empty anymore. Figures stood among the trees, hundreds, maybe more. Their outlines wavered in the mist, half solid, half shadow. Each face glowed faintly from within, as if lit by their own memory. She recognized some. The Whitfields from the 1999 footage. Daniel and Elaine and the children. Behind them, the Holloway kids from 1954, then the Kell twins from 1966, then others she didn't know. All of them silent, all of them watching. Lena lifted the camera slowly. The hum grew stronger, matching the rhythm of her pulse. Why me? She whispered. A small shape stepped forward from the crowd, a girl with dark curls and a red ribbon tangled in her hair. Ruthie Kell. The child tilted her head. Because you listened? Lena's eyes filled. What do you want? To finish what they started. The ground trembled. The air thickened, vibrating with the weight of that single word. Behind the girl, the orchard began to move. Not the wind. Something beneath, rising, pushing against the roots. Lena backed away. "If I finish it, does it stop?" Ruthie blinked. "Nothing stops. It only remembers." The hum became a roar. Light surged from the soil, blinding white, washing over everything. When it cleared, Lena stood alone. The orchard was gone. In its place stretched a perfect field of smooth gray concrete, unbroken except for a single line etched across the center. The Holler Line. Her camera still recorded. She knelt, tracing the letters with her fingertip. The surface was warm. Beneath it, she could hear faint whispers, thousands of them, telling their stories all at once. She looked up at the lens, eyes wet, voice steady. "If you're watching this, don't try to dig. Don't even come here. It doesn't want to be found anymore." The feed crackled. The last thing visible was the golden shimmer climbing her reflection, spreading across the screen like roots through glass. Then the image froze. 2 days later, the valley was quiet again. From above, the new concrete plain looked like frozen water, smooth, seamless, and faintly glinting under a gray dawn. The orchard was gone, the dam erased, the foundations buried beneath a single continuous slab that stretched from the mill to the reservoir. On paper, they called it containment. The federal crews worked behind tall fences, their trucks unmarked, their faces hidden behind respirators. Drones hovered, scanning the surface for fractures. None appeared. By noon, they packed up and left. The valley was sealed again. But even from the highway, locals swore they could feel it, the low pulse in their chests when the wind changed direction. In Springfield, Jay woke from his coma. The first thing he asked for was his phone. When they handed it to him, he opened his camera app automatically, as if pulled by instinct. The screen glitched, static, then a frame of golden light. For a heartbeat, Lena's face appeared. "Jay," she said softly. He dropped the phone. The nurses came running, but by the time they picked it up, the screen was blank again. That night, the hospital security system detected an audio anomaly, a faint vibration just below hearing, recorded on every microphone in the building. Frequency, 19.9 hertz, the same as the hum. Weeks passed. The viral clip of Lena's final transmission hit 20 million views before the platform removed it. Too late. Users mirrored it, remixed it, slowed it, reversed it. In every version, the same pattern appeared, lines of pixels forming faint roots across the image, spreading outward from her reflection. The more it played, the more devices it touched. Speakers hummed without signal. Cameras glowed faintly in dark rooms. Some called it a ghost frequency. Others said it was proof of something living beneath the foundations. Kate's didn't believe either. She'd moved inland, tried to leave it all behind. But sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could still hear it, steady, patient, alive. She kept the concrete apple on her desk, the one she'd found on her car seat the night the valley sealed. The line carved across it caught the lamplight like a scar. She told herself it was just a reminder, but part of her knew it pulsed when she wasn't looking. In October, a new housing project broke ground 40 miles north. The company name on the permit was unfamiliar. Lineworks Development. The first concrete pour began at dawn. Workers joked about the cold, about the way the soil steamed even before sunrise. At 7:13 a.m., the foreman's radio picked up an open channel, a woman's voice. Calm, measured, slightly distorted. "This is Lena Graves, reporting from the Holler Line. If you can hear this, don't pour. Don't cover it again." The signal cut off, replaced by static. One of the workers looked down at the fresh concrete. The surface rippled faintly, like breath. "Must be air in the mix," he muttered. He smoothed it with his trowel. The gray surface settled, perfect and still. By nightfall, the site lights flickered. The power grid logged an unexplained frequency surge across the county, short, rhythmic, barely measurable. In the control trailer, a monitor flashed. New file detected. H-line 001.move. The playback showed only a gray field of concrete, then a reflection forming slowly in its center. A woman's face, calm, dusted in ash, eyes glowing faintly with gold. "You buried the sound," she whispered. "Now it's yours to keep." The screen went black. A faint vibration rolled through the floor, as if the earth itself exhaled. Months later, true crime podcasts picked up the story. The missing journalist, the strange hum, the sealed valley no one was allowed to enter. They spliced her recovered audio into their intros, chasing clicks. Each episode opened the same way. You're listening to the Holler Line, where the ground never forgets. And every listener, whether they noticed or not, felt the same small tremor beneath their feet.